Now, the secret to gratitude is authenticity. So, in kindergarten, we all learn to say please and thank you. When you're an adult and you say thank you, you have to really come from your heart. You have to really look at someone. They have to receive it. So message sent has to be message received. Okay?
So important. Thank you for reminding us.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Oh, goodness. All right, here we are, serious again. Now let's explore. When it is really that time to quit a job, that you really do hate that boss and it's a pretty good job with fairly good pay, how can that play out?
Okay. You cannot quit because you're annoyed, aggravated, furious, disappointed, sad, confused. In other words, you can never quit a job or a marriage because of your emotions. If you quit because of your emotions, you are lost. When I went to camp the very first year, sleepaway camp, I was 7. And it was a 2-month sleepaway camp. And I had wanted to go, so nobody forced me into it. And when my parents came up in the middle for the weekend, my mother said, "Are you having a good time, Susie?" And I said, "I really love the camp, and I really love my counselors, and I really love my friends, and I want to go home." So my mother said, it's really important to do what we say we're going to do in life. It's the most important thing that can happen to anybody, because then someone else can depend on them and they get a good reputation. She went on and on. So I stayed, and she gave me a choice, and I stayed. Now, years later, when I was 14 years old, I went to a sleepaway French camp with my best friend. And my best friend and I actually went to camp together a few years later, but now we're 14. And she calls her mother at 14 years of age and says, "Mother, I hate it. I hate speaking French every day. I want to come home." And her mother let her come home. And her life has been full of a lot of problems. Now, I'm not saying that this is the thing that made all the difference for me. I presume I had a certain amount of self-control and stick to it anyway. But if you're in this situation as a parent, and if you're in this situation as an employee or just a human being, be very cautious about leaving precipitously. And if it's a job, it's about your bank account. That's all you can look at, because your job is about paying bills. So just be really careful, please.
I like those stories, Susan. You stayed with it. That was a great lesson.
Now,
for your mother.
like you and I, we stick with everything. So
Yes.
that's probably one of the ways it happened.
That determination.
Well, not with marriages. I didn't stay with marriages.
Oh, well, that's another show.
No, my mother never told me I had to, so there you go. Then I got a divorce, first one in my family, going back to Adam and Eve, and then my mother got a divorce. I said, "Oh no, I've started a trend."
Well, more
Back
highlights
to, right.
on that.
Back to.
Okay, back to this job situation. What reasons are there when you really should quit, and what are some of the reasons why you really could stay?
Okay. So this is, like any situation in life that's making you crazy, making you sick. If you come home with headaches, like my mother was a very famous interior designer, but she could have been 1,000 times more famous, and she could have earned 10 times more money if she had taken this job that she took with a really big antique company and stayed there. She took the job. I must have been about, 9 or 10 years old. She came home every day, and I said, "Did you enjoy, your job, Mommy?" And she said, "I have a headache down to here." Okay. "Did you enjoy your job, Mommy?" The next day, "I have a headache down to here." So after about a week, she went in and she talked to them. They were very dear friends. She said, "I love you guys. This is not for me." So she could afford it. She did it in a responsible way. She communicated her needs that weren't getting met, not as if they were at fault. She communicated it because her needs weren't getting met and looked for options that would work for her and work for them. And she still was very friendly with them, but she didn't work for them. It's different.
A headache down to here. That's
Isn't that a
very
good expression?
interesting.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's a great expression. Yeah.
That reminds me of a relationship I once had. Another show.
From the ground up was the headache you had, right?
Let's explore. What about this goal-reaching skills that I know that you've developed, Susan? Where do they factor in when we are in a tough work situation?
Well, as I always say to you guys, if you have more skills, you can solve problems and you can prevent problems and you can resolve them in lots of ways. So if you're in a tight spot financially and you have a job you don't love, then you want to set goals about by day month 2015, I am offered a new job with a salary of X dollars gross and blah, blah, blah. So you have to always focus on what you want. The people who are successful in any area of life are people, we're focusing on what we want. We don't get ourselves all freaked out in the middle of a mess. We're focusing on what we want. So by July 30th, 2015, I am offered a job and all the details, right? And I'm working with someone right now who's got a huge job opportunity, $500,000 a year, and it isn't perfect. And we're working on all the different factors that would make this a better job. Because it doesn't matter what level you're at, you have to be practical enough to set goals. So this person is setting goals that are about big numbers. You may be setting goals that are about smaller numbers, but start small and you'll end up big.
I love that. Your goal teaching. Fascinating.
Goal teaching, goal reaching. Thank you.
Exactly.
I never saw it that way. Thank you. That's great.
More to come.
Note to self, right?
Yeah. Now, how does someone actually really create goals that allow them to find great job options and generate those successful interviews?
It's all about focus and it's all about determination. So focus is the upper left brain. This is what you're good at. These are the skills you have. These are the jobs you've done in the past. This is the difference that you've made in these companies. Quantify the difference you've made in those companies. Nobody taught me this a million years ago when I was in the fashion industry, but I realized I designed a pair of pants and we sold $5 million of that pant to Walmart. Well, what that did to the bottom line of the company was gigantic, absolutely gigantic. I worked with another company and we would sell $1.5 million of a particular collection I designed, $1.5 million of another collection I designed. And that had a huge impact on what the company that was my client was able to accomplish. And that went into all of my resumes because these were clients of mine by and large. So easy for me to find a new client. All I had to do was tell them about those numbers, right?
The facts. Oh, I'm really proud of you, Susan.
Thanks.
And that's before you knew all these skills,
That's
too.
right. I was
That's-
developing
yeah.
them for myself, exactly.
Well, now I know this occurs, it's a common occurrence, this question, when people are actually keeping a job but looking for a new job, they tend to let their moods show at work. Could you explain to us how dangerous that is?
Yeah, because nobody wants to pay for that. Think about it. Nobody wants to pay for moods. And it's really important if you think of the needs of your boss, if you think of your coworkers' needs, if you put yourself in the boss's shoes, don't do it. It doesn't work. Be very cautious, very careful. If you cannot afford to lose that job, behave as if you cannot afford to lose that job. Give the boss exactly what he or she needs as much as is humanly possible. You'll get promoted, you'll get a raise. Isn't that better?
Yes, they're not going to want to do without me. I love that. Great approach. I know that people think that it is really safe to gossip with their coworkers, that perhaps is a friend. Please explain how that works out.
You know, as we said earlier on, if you're gossiping at work, it's a disaster because people can overhear you. And it's a disaster because no boss or president of the company, et cetera, is going to keep around somebody who's like that one rotten apple that spoils the whole bunch. But if you start to gossip to your friends outside of work, and I've seen this with people who are my friends gossiping to me, and they end up going to work with a bad attitude. And I was just telling a friend yesterday or the day before who's got this really bad attitude that comes and goes with her, and I said, you can't talk about your boss that way. And I know it's because of what your boyfriend says, because I know him. I knew her boyfriend before she did. So I said, you can't talk to him about your boss. He doesn't understand what's required in order to keep this job and get this money and have it on your resume and all the restrictive things she does where she's so successful compared to the man in her life. So you can't talk to him about this anymore because every time you talk to him, you get on the phone with me with a bad attitude again. And that bad attitude shows. And she's in a situation at work that she doesn't like, and it's only because of this bad attitude from home that started to show up at work, and because of that, something happened with her employee. So prevent. It's much cheaper and easier and more satisfying than trying to fix problems.
Oh, I like that. You get yourself too worked up, and the other person, that just contributes to not working out.
Yeah, and if you're interested in making a lot of money and having a really successful career and being promoted and all this, none of these behaviors work.
What is it that, let's say, the takeaway, if you really do indeed hate your boss and you're planning to leave, how do you get the best chance of that great review before you leave?
Well, you have to have so much self-control. You have to have so much self-discipline. You have to really be conscientious. And I see that we've got some extra time, Gigi. So, let's talk about some examples. If you're really young, you need mentors because mentors will remind you of this. This is one of the jobs I perform when I'm coaching a young person. I'm mentoring them in the sense that I'm reminding them what it's really like to be the boss, running a company, paying all the money the boss has to pay for all these employees, needing to keep the lights on, needing to keep the bills paid, all those things. A lot of people who are employees that I've worked with for years and years, because I've worked with so many corporations, they think that if they bring in some sort of a sale, they get an order, if they get a contract, that it's strictly profit. If the difference between what that widget costs and what that widget sells for, the difference is not profit because the company has to pay rent. They have to keep the lights on. They have a phone system. They're paying you benefits of some sort. Even if it's just, unemployment insurance down the road, they're paying you some sort of benefit. They have all sorts of taxes that they have to pay. They have the salaries, not just of you, but they have the salaries of everybody else there. When you look at it, whatever you're going to sell, about 25% of that or 30% of that, they don't see a dime of it. And so when you really understand how companies work, then you're just not going to feel so angry. So immediately you're going to feel less angry, and that's the way to approach this. So the takeaway is, when I really understand the way the company operates, when I really understand what my boss has to deal with, when I understand what is going on here, not only are you a better employee, not only do you begin to be prepared to own your own company, as I have for all these 40 years, because I understand what it meant for all my clients to keep the lights on and to keep paying me all those years. And when you understand that, you begin to be ready to be an employer, a better employee, a secure employee.
I like that. You're just keeping an eye on the very big picture in the situation, whichever role that you're playing. And we tend not to think about the stress and all the details.
And you're responsible.
Yes.
Because even if you're the lowest person on the totem pole, if you behave with responsibility, if you behave as if this is important, I am important here, that's a completely different energy. I remember when I was a kid, there was a doorman at one of the department stores in New York, Henry Bendel. And this doorman took his job so seriously that we all knew his name was Buster. When Buster retired, people were like heartbroken. He was such a fixture at Bendel's, and he was just the doorman. And yet he took his job so seriously. He had so much self-respect, and he had so much respect for everybody else.
I love that. When you're dealing with someone in business and they're really, really respectful and appreciative of where they are, they're really where they want to be. Oh, that brings so much joy. It makes such a difference, that energy.
And you know, Buster got to do his job until he was in his mid-80s. He didn't look it. Nobody even thought about it because he had so much energy. But he got to keep his job, 20 years after the average doorman is, retired. He got to keep his job.
What a joy. I really appreciate people out there that I come across in business that really are into the moment and really making the best of it. Mm-hmm. Not that attitude of, I'd rather be anywhere else. Mm-hmm. What a difference. Thank you for pointing that out.
That we all have had too much of.
Now, for everybody out there, Susan, could you please explain to us what the takeaway recipe would be if you really do hate your boss and you need to keep your job for now?
Well, you have to really talk to yourself that way. You know, when you're getting ready to go to work in the morning, you don't let yourself think about how much you hate it. You think about being one day closer to your exit. And when you're at work, you think about yourself as getting this paycheck you really need so that you won't be dependent on this job in the near future. So everything you do, instead of being negative and looking behind you, oh, I hate this, I hate this, I hate them, I hate myself, instead you're really focusing with tremendous, putting your energy on the future. I am one day closer to my next job. I am doing this job so that I have the ability to pay all my bills and also go home tonight and send more resumes out. So that tomorrow during my lunch hour, I can call another headhunter and set up another headhunter appointment for another lunch hour. I'm doing my job so well that my boss doesn't suspect that I'm interviewing. I'm doing my job so well that my management doesn't think for a second that I'm out there interviewing. I'm keeping this job because this is the job I need until the job that's perfect for me shows up. So that's different versions of positive self-talk, and you've got to be able to do it because that's power. If you can do positive self-talk, if you can, motivate and inspire yourself, keep yourself on the straight and narrow, you are building a life that works every single day, every week, every month, and every year. That's the trick.
I love that, Susan. And then it could be surprising because if you do go through this and give it your best, you could end up turning it around to where I'm really going to miss this. You know, I really appreciate so much more about it.
Or you might even be called into the office of your boss, not to be fired, but to be acknowledged and given some words of appreciation and even a positive review and a raise. So if somebody gets a positive review and the raise, they might not hate their boss so much anyway.
It can turn around.
Really can.
And that's the truth in any situation. And I think that's what the viewers have to understand, that you work so hard on with people, regardless of what situation they're in, what their challenges are, that you can turn it around and be happier within, regardless of maybe your obstacles.
Yeah, and the difference between really successful people in any area of life and not so successful people, or people who are really struggling, is usually not how talented somebody is. It's usually, what are you willing to do to get the results you want, and how focused are you on those results every single day? Because if you're starting a company, if you're an entrepreneur, the secret is doing something every day to further the new business. If you're looking for a new job, the secret is doing something every day to get your new job. It's 1,000,000 times more effective than taking 3 days off and looking for a job. If you spend time every single day looking for a new job, updating your resume, sending out your resume, looking for more jobs, you'll get that job.
That's how I got one of my great jobs in life.
That's right.
Determination.
And focus.
Yes, absolutely.
It's true.
I didn't even beg. It's amazing. Okay, well, I would just like to let everyone know that this is indeed the first of the 3-part series. The second part in 2 weeks is what if I hate my employee who does a great job? So just kind of the reverse we're going to play with. And then the third part in July we're going to explore is what if I can't stand one of my coworkers? I think we can all relate to these emotions, but we're going to get them under control. And with your help, Susan, we're going to make it all work out.
Because they're all recipes for disaster, every one of them, right?
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter if you're the boss, doesn't matter if you're the subordinate, doesn't matter if you're one of the team members. If you show up at work and you hate being there and you hate them, it's a disaster.
Absolutely. And what I really enjoy about all of this is through this process of rethinking and our language of our focusing on what we want our goals to be, in that process, it's almost magical because it's as if they're not going to want to see you go. Imagine that.
That's right. It's true.
You can't wait to wave goodbye, perhaps, but they're going to be sad.
Bye-bye.
Quite a spin on that one, huh? Well, thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Always informative and something that I know can enrich everyone's lives. Very worth exploring with Susan. So I'd like to remind everyone that Susan, you can enjoy her Ask the Love and Relationship Coach column here in our Santa Barbara Family Life magazine. This is available online as well, and it's www.sbfamilylife.com. And I enjoy reading this all the time when it comes out.
Thank you.
Now, Susan's new website is www.heartspacesolutions.com.